I probably don't do this enough. I mean, I know I run my mouth enough, but I probably don't thank our sponsors enough. I want to once again thank our sponsors, Micky Finn's, MPD Electric, Schofield's Carolina Bank, Pepsi of Florence. We encourage our listeners, viewers, to support our sponsors. This will be a bit different today. Normally, it's me and my big mouth and these perfectly accurate opinions, but today it'll be different. We've actually got a phone interview with a friend of mine, a political consultant turned pollster, Robert Cahaly, senior strategist at Trafalgar, agreed to join us. We couldn't work out some of the video components, but we felt it's very worthy content, very interesting content. Robert actually, I mean, for those that don't know, I guess I'll update again. The name of the podcast, No Stoplights, is a reference to my once holding office as a lieutenant governor in South Carolina. Everybody had a black suit and a red tie, blue suit and a blue tie. You try to create contrast. You try to cut through the clutter. I would have been an unconventional candidate. Didn't register to vote, lost 40. Got elected to county council, I think at the age of 46, got elected lieutenant governor of South Carolina. But a part of my spiel, or shtick, so to speak, was I'm a college dropout from a town with no stoplight. Take what I say with a grain of salt or for what it's worth. One of the things I did that I have no regrets about, and one of the best decisions I've ever made in my political life, was hiring Robert Cahaly to be my consultant and chief strategist. I felt I was a pretty decent candidate, but I had no understanding at all about campaigning, and I mean, obviously, campaign finance was not my strong suit. But Robert and I, got together. He was my chief strategist and consultant. We argued a lot. We got along some. You can imagine candidate-consultant relationships are a bit strained at times. But Robert built a mousetrap, and I guess that's the best way to explain it at Trafalgar, in finding the Trump voter. And a lot of the science behind it is pretty simple. Trump is he still is. I mean, he's a unique political candidate. I call him a political unicorn. He's a political blunt instrument. He does things that nobody else can do and get away with it. And I'm not saying that's good, bad, or indifferent. A lot of Americans believe the office of the presidency deserves more reverence and respect. You decide that. That's not for me to make a determination on your behalf. But Robert began considering whether people were being candid and honest about voting for Trump or not. So Trafalgar Robert really and truly came up with the strategy, or the methodology behind trying to locate the Trump voter. And it was kind of posed in this fashion. Don't hold me to this. Cahaly can clean this up if he needs to. But Robert basically asked a likely Republican voter if they were going to vote for Donald Trump or would consider voting for Donald Trump. And the respondent to the question would say, no, of course not. They're insinuating, I'm above that. I mean, I'm a good and decent moral person. I'm not voting for a crazy person or some outlandish candidate like Donald Trump. And then Robert would ask a follow-up. Well, how about your neighbors? And the respondent would always say, not always, but more times than not say, hell yeah. I mean, both of those are voting for Trump. The guy on my right's got the flag on his boat. The guy on my left's got yard signs. They got a MAGA hat. The damn kids have a MAGA hat. Well, you know what that person is saying. They're nervous about verbalizing their support of Trump, but their neighbors aren't. So are you that different than your neighbor? Of course you aren't. But Robert took that mousetrap and built a very lucrative business, and I'm proud of him and happy for him as he partnered with Trafalgar, and they have become one of the preeminent pollsters in all of America. I think Robert's knowledge and understanding of politics at the grassroots and sophisticated level is elite. I mean, it's as good as it gets when it comes to that. So not only do he and I have this past relationship of running in a campaign together, him being somewhat of an upstart consultant, me being obviously a novice at running for office, but out of that came a statewide election in South Carolina. I end up with a radio show and a podcast. Robert ends up senior strategist at Trafalgar, and as I said, one of the most noted pollsters and strategists in American politics today. And Robert agreed to join us on a phone call this week and we're going to play an excerpt because I think it's more interesting than I could give you my take on the presidential cycle and where I think we are today and what I think we need to look for, but it would be that of an opinion monster. And I think very often you guys deserve someone who makes a living keeping up with what people are thinking, how they may vote, how they may not vote. So instead of me kind of staring in and out of a camera, shuffling through pages, thanking sponsors, we're going to spend about the next 20 or so minutes with Robert Cahaly on the phone and kind of an excerpt of an interview we did about the presidential cycle, the state of the Republican Party, what the Democrats are having to say grace over, and we think you'll find it at least as interesting as some of the offerings that your humble host makes. So here we go. We've tried to, for the first couple of hours of today's broadcast, analyze where we think we are. That's unfair. We've analyzed where I think we are in regards to the Republican primary. We've not dedicated enough time to that. We really and truly have chased these other electric vehicles and Ukrainian situation, and obviously the Biden scandal has occupied a lot of our time. I've never covered an issue in 11 years of radio as complicated as the Biden scandal because there's no reporting on it. I mean, there's no Wall Street Journal articles or CBS news stories to either affirm or contradict one or the other. But I did feel, as we take off the week of the July 4th week, that let's kind of set the table of where we think we are in regards to the Republican primary. But I'm a non-professional. I'm a former candidate. I'm not analytically inclined. I'm not statistically inclined. I'm more instinctive and gut. Robert Cahaly of Trafalgar, senior strategist at Trafalgar, is a professional. He is someone who can understand the data in a different way than most of us can. Robert's been kind enough to join us this morning. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. Good to be here.
So, Robert, I'm making an argument, and I want to get your take on this. From what my reviewing of the data, my interpretation of the data is that Donald Trump can win, but it's far more likely DeSantis does. Is that a fair analysis?
DeSantis does win the primary?
No, the general election. And I'm calling it.
Okay.
Well, okay. Let's back up half step.
All right.
This is not even a 2-horse race as we speak. To me, it's a 1-horse race. You got Trump, and then you've got DeSantis far behind, and then even further behind than that, you've got. But the argument I'm making is Trump is, without question, the dominant political figure in the Republican primary. But I see signs that lead me to believe he would struggle in a general. What say you to that?
Well, I think we've already seen the left starting to demonstrate how they would attack DeSantis. The left has a real problem with any Republican who rises based on populist messaging. So any Republican who comes up with that messaging is going to be attacked almost as viciously. Now, of the Republicans who would have a chance in the general election, I would say a lot of them have a great chance if it's Biden. As a matter of fact, if it's Biden, most of them have an excellent chance of beating Biden. Most every candidate running for president on the Republican side. Now, if they get a ticket a little smoother and a little younger, it can get more competitive. But I would tell you that as far as the general election goes, I would think that DeSantis would be just as attacked and as Trump. As a matter of fact, they're beating him up on the his signing of a heartbeat bill, making him an extremist on abortion. They would, from what's been going on lately, they've been attacking him more on abortion than Trump. They've been attacking him on Disney and all the other stuff. So I don't know that I would say DeSantis directly would be better than Trump, but I think both of them can win the general election. But as far as if you're just trying to elect a Republican and win the general election, then you probably ought to be looking at Tim Scott or a Chris Christie or something. But if it's about, which of the ones who are leading and win the general election, yeah, I would definitely say DeSantis has an advantage over Trump. but both of them will be attacked the way anybody espousing populist ideology is going to be attacked.
Robert, how burdensome is, and this is kind of a general word, but the baggage that Trump brings? I mean, Trump brings he's a political unicorn. We've never seen anybody like him, but he does bring baggage to the equation. How do pollsters and strategists account for the negativity around that baggage Trump brings? And I'm talking about his personality, his bombast, his narcissism. I mean, I know Republican voters who will vote for Trump, but they don't care much for him, and they associate his personality with that baggage. How big a drag is that?
It can be a significant drag, and one of the ways we've measured that is by asking people second choices. And one of the things we talked about on the last time I did Bartiromo's morning show on Sunday was the fact that if you tell people, all right, we know what your first choice is, now which of the following candidates is your second choice, even if you don't say Trump's name again, the vast majority of Trump voters say Trump again. And the fact that they say Trump the second time is really strange. I mean, like, the list doesn't even have Trump on it. They will interrupt and say, well, no, I want Trump again, And like, but no, you're supposed to say somebody different. I don't care. And like, they will bust the rule of the poll just to say Trump a second time. That is very unique. So I don't think that element of his following is going anywhere. If I think anything, I think some of this constant legal stuff is literally giving him strength, in that it's kind of reinforcing his narrative that they'll do anything to keep me out of Washington. And I think there's part of it. Yeah, there's part of it who put this to his personality, but he's not. These things aren't happening because of mean tweets. Both impeachments had nothing to do with his personality, and certainly I would think the only thing it would have to do with the personality is probably this crazy lady thinking she can claim that she got raped 20 years ago. That might have to do with something his personality and things he said. But as far as all the other stuff that's happening, it is literally stuff of people digging into his record. And, basically reading things that aren't there. Listen, we've all heard the phone call in Georgia. That sounds like a guy lightheartedly saying, hey, you find votes there, girl, would you find me 11,000? I mean, it didn't sound like you need to find me 11,000 votes. It's totally different, but, people can read it as they want. They see all the things that are coming after Trump as nonsense. Now, there's a real question as to what the Presidential Records Act covers, and we see so many different interpretations of it. I'd love to get a clear answer, but I don't know that any of us have a clear answer. But whether that's been violated, the tape they have is very meaningful, depending upon what the Presidential Records Act actually means.
Robert, do you expect the Republican primary to tighten up? I called it a 1.5 horse race today. Do you expect us at some point in time before the primary, before people start voting in primaries, for this race to get significantly closer?
Right now it doesn't seem that way. It doesn't seem that it's headed that way. I think a lot of dynamics will occur around that Republican debate. And by that, I mean which Republicans make the stage. If I had to guess, Trump will say he's not coming as he waits to see who's in it, and then maybe make a game time decision, because if Trump decided 5 minutes before that debate started that he wanted to go, they would set up a podium for him, because they know the ratings will be incredible if he does come. So I think we're going to see. I don't think we'll see any big shakeup until then, because right now in politics, this is no man's land. Everybody's kind of off, and by everybody, I mean a lot of the reporters have taken time off. You'll notice you're starting to see a lot of guest hosts on TV. Well, even more so in the reporting crowd. So it's just people working skeleton crews right now, and there's just not the intense reporting you're going to have probably until mid-August again when this thing all starts getting cranked up, which is right about the time of that debate. So I would say it's not going to change much until that debate. And some of these chairs may shuffle. The only thing I'm seeing really moving right now is Tim Scott. Tim Scott appears to be a vote vampire, and he is sucking all the votes out of Nikki Haley as fast as he can. I have never seen something happen so fast. So many people who were for Haley have come over to Tim Scott. He started to be even within some polls, but it would not surprise me if Tim Scott has completely surpassed Haley in every poll by the time we get to the summer.
Robert, interesting doesn't mean win, but Vivek Ramaswamy has made an interesting impact in the Republican primary. Once again, that's as a former politician who finds him interesting. Does that reflect any at all in the data?
Absolutely. Look, the guy was at 1%. And now he's in the conversation with Christie, Haley, and Scott. I mean, listen, this guy, if this guy's the Don Lemon slayer, he's the Chuck Todd slayer. This guy's not afraid to go on any leftist broadcast. And unlike Tim Scott, who made his points on The View, I think Ramaswamy would have probably ended up with one of them having to resign on The View. When this guy gets done with you, it's not pretty. He has a very good way of putting people in their place. He is sharp on his feet. And if Ramaswamy is not doesn't finish and make it this time, I don't think this guy's going anywhere. And he's literally made a name for himself. If you look back at where it started, if this was like high school or college football, this guy gets the most improved award without a doubt.
Is our party now, is the party that you and I have you grew up more so than I did as an activist and kind of a worker bee and ends up, on the good side of polling and strategizing and whatnot. Is our party today, is it as simple as describing our party and its evolution today as a pro-worker, anti-war party? Or is that simply a movement within the bigger Republican Party?
I would say our economics are that of pro-work, or of how does it affect pro-worker and how does it affect domestic? So, do we like a free trade? Yeah. Do we like fair trade? That's what our definition of free trade is. So I would say it's a pro-United States, as in what is our specific economic and military best interest. So if a conflict is for example, losing Taiwan to China destroys our economy. There's no question that is in America's best interest. There's no question that is a place with having a fight, because nobody's getting anything if we lose Taiwan right now with the level of chip manufacturing to where it is. Some can argue about how that affects in Ukraine. I think the Ukraine were beating Russia and destroying them for a few pennies on the dollar what it would cost to do it with our actual military and our people. Our military's cost is people, not really weaponry. And we don't want to see our kids coming home in body bags. So if we can just spend money over there. But there are certainly Republicans who oppose all of it. But I think that it is a people's kind of small, I wouldn't even say worker, I would just say people who work hard for a living party. So a guy who owns 3 dry cleaners, he's probably what some would consider rich, but he works hard every day. He would consider himself a Republican. Now, a guy who's the CEO who walks around and eats nothing but catered lunches and flies on a private jet, he's rich and he don't work hard every day.
So it's an anti-corporatist party?
I would describe it as the work. The people who literally come home exhausted, it's the party for them.
And the party that believes we made big mistakes in involving ourselves in foreign conflict, that we were potentially misled about American safety and security?
Right. And how we handled them wrong.
Explain. What do you mean how we handled them wrong?
What did we learn after World War II? You don't go in and wipe out all the leadership in one of these countries. We didn't do it in Japan. We didn't do it in Germany. After those two conflicts, when World War II was over, we went through and we figured out which people were absolutely loyal to the Nazis or to the Japanese, and filtered them out, and which people were just kind of, conscripts signing up to help their country, and put them in charge, and gave them a sense of self-government back. We went into Iraq and destroyed the Ba'ath Party completely, even though that party was very good at running the government. And we could have said, hey, Saddam's not in charge, we're going to have a democracy, and we're going to pay all you guys to defend it. Instead, we destroy the Ba'ath Party and turn them into the resistance. That is not learning the lessons of World War II that have delivered such great results. That is literally going backwards in our knowledge.
So, Robert, if this is where we are, and I'd be so interested in your take here because you know this world better, far better than I do. If we are a pro-work party and we're somewhat of an anti-interventionist party and we're somewhat of an anti-corporatist movement within our party, who pays the bills now? I mean, the Republicans historically have raised a lot of money from Big Pharma, corporate America, the military-industrial complex. If we are serious about restoring the party to the people, who foots the bills? Who pays for candidates to win seats?
Well, right now, our candidates are being funded by small dollar contributions and by that level of people who are wealthy who actually earned it. That first generation wealth that built the company. Because there are a lot of people out there who worked very hard to make what turned out to be hundreds of millions or a few $1 billion. And those people are the ones funding it, and not so much the corporations.
I want to get your take on this because I don't know anybody other than you that could answer this question. I've got a hunch and an instinct, and my gut says one thing. But I've read a lot of polling, some of your information, some of your data collecting, that the majority of Republican voters describe themselves as America Firsters. Now, there would be a variety of, what America First means to you may be a little bit different than what it does to me. But I think the Republican Party has evolved and transitioned from kind of a neoconservative movement post-Second World War. You touched on that a few moments ago, to this pro-work, non-interventionist party. The majority of voters are there. How many of the influencers, how many of the power brokers are on board? And I know you got to be careful there, but I mean, to me, a political party exists to advance the will of the public. So if we are on board with America First, but the power brokers and influencers who have historically led the party in one direction aren't, isn't that a conundrum?
Well, this is something I used in describing how this primary was going in the beginning. I said that you can either be running a primary trying to win donors, or you can be running a primary trying to win voters. Because the activists and voters who vote in primaries, and this is an important distinction. People keep saying, all right, they'll break down national polls to Republicans and determine, well, that's Republican primary voters. No, it's not. The kind of people who bring themselves up for Republican primary, especially in states where South Carolina, where it's a separate primary from our regular primary, is a very small subset of Republicans. So it's more akin to activists. So the kind of people who vote in these presidential primaries and the average donor to the Republican Party, the average power broker, they're running in opposite directions. And what happens is the power brokers and donors have to get on board with America First candidates who tend to win these nominations, and they get frustrated. And then when a person like that, they're in position to help them, a great example will be a Masters in Arizona, then the power brokers refuse to help them. And then they end up blaming them as being bad candidates. When if they had given them the kind of money they gave the other people, you call them Senator Masters today.
So, Robert, if that's the case, I mean, and you're agreeing that we're in somewhat of a state of flux in regards to that. Who do we look to? I mean, who who fills that gap? Is it J.D. Vance? You talked about Blake Masters a second ago. I mean, who are the personalities? I mean, I think you and I would agree if Trump wins in 2024 or he doesn't, I mean, we're at the end of the Trump era. We're not at the end of America First. I think we're at the beginning of America First, but we're at the end of the Trump era. How do we sustain a political movement? In other words, if we believe this evolution is, who comes next? And what does it take to continue to develop candidates, win elections, advance an agenda?
Well, the single most important thing is to take the leadership or to make the leadership come to your side. Now, the tightness of the Republican majority in the House have necessitated that McCarthy become much more of an America Firster than he was. And we've seen it. He's done a good job. I mean, he isn't perfect, but that's the nature of negotiation. But until you have somebody with some clout who is ready to dethrone Mitch McConnell, you aren't going to change the Senate because he controls too much of the money. I mean, he spent $250 million last year, and I might say he spent it very poorly, defending Lisa Murkowski, beating up on Kelly Chewbacca, ignoring Bulldog, doing not near what he should have done for Herschel, and doing nothing for Masters. And he could have made the difference in all three of those races. And so, so these guys are running around blaming the candidates when they lose. But if you ended up, let's say you got in a world where a Josh Hawley or somebody like a J.D. Vance could be the Senate Majority Leader, well, then you got a whole new ballgame.
Are we close there, Robert? Are you optimistic that if Vance or Hawley put their name in the hopper, they would get more or less votes than I'd imagine they'd get?
Until we start having an open, transparent vote for Majority Leader in the Senate instead of a secret ballot, there's no telling because all kind of shenanigans are being played. The fact that the most important vote that happens every year in the House of Representatives we watch play out on national television, and the most important vote that happened in the Senate was behind closed doors, is a contrast and is something we ought to be ashamed of.
Well said. Last question. I want to take you out of your field of expertise, but kind of keep in the world of polling and strategizing. Where do you think this investigation into Hunter Biden leads? Because I've always said, forget Hunter Biden. This is about Joe Biden. What did Joe Biden know? What did Joe Biden do? What did Joe Biden get? Hunter Biden is obviously a troubled man. He just happens to be the son of an American president. But I want to know more about what Joe Biden's involvement was. How does that affect the presidential election? And do the Democrats have a plan if indeed there is incriminating information involving Joe Biden?
Well, I would argue if the Democrats wanted Joe Biden to stay as their nominee, we wouldn't see half the things we're seeing on Joe Biden. I think they told him not to run again. I think that's why Rice left the administration right before the announcement. They said, okay, you can do it our way, you can do it the hard way. I think they're part of leaking this stuff and doing it slowly so others, can be time built for the inevitability that he's not going to be around. And the fact that mainstream media is covering more of Joe's slip-ups, I think they'd like to see him out of the way. And sooner rather than later, their problem is Kamala. They have to let her be president or to run her because it's her turn. They played identity politics in America for 40-something years. They can't let it be a black woman's turn and go throw a pretty white man in the job. You can't do it. Their most loyal constituency is black women. They cannot do that to them. So they've got to let her be president sooner rather than later. And if she fails, then go beat her in the primary. So I think that everybody's moving toward one way or another, whether it's 25th Amendment, whether it's impeachment, whether it's him getting drawn to this and cutting a deal to resign. They need to get him out of the way because they are scared to death that, like I said, any Republican can beat him, including Donald Trump.
Who's the most dangerous Democrat out there? Who is the one Democrat that Republicans don't want to run against?
John Bel Edwards, the pro-life, pro-gun governor of Louisiana, who signed a pro-life bill that doesn't even include exemptions for rape and incest.
Interesting. But could he win a primary, Robert, against a Gavin Newsom?
I can't even say the word that should precede no. But I'll just say, please, no.
So there's the situation. So, Robert, as we sit the week before July 4, this is Trump's primary to lose.
It is right now. Absolutely.
All right, my man. Appreciate your time. Robert Cahaly, senior strategist, Trafalgar, joining us for an extended 2-segment bit of Wake Up Carolina. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it, my man.
You might even make me late to the Braves game. You know it's a 12-20, right?
Yeah, but the Braves are rolling. I think Rev told me 19-4
in June,
and in the month of June. Go Braves!
That doesn't mean I want to be there first inning.
Yeah, okay.
Right. You don't want to miss the home runs.
There you good deal. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate it. And I mean, I don't think there was any earth-shattering news there. Well, I mean, there might be some earth-shattering news. And I mean, Robert's plugged in, guys. I mean, I'm not. I don't have any desire to be plugged in. Robert is extremely plugged in, and I think for him to suggest that some of the Democrats are kind of leading the charge
now, see,
and putting Joe Biden in precarious situations is very interesting.
As pretty interesting, earth-shattering news. We all kind of believe that, I think. But
I'll say this. I kind of sort of thought Robert may know the ins and outs of that. I didn't think he would disclose it. I mean, I didn't think he would say that, you know, he believes the I mean, it's a fraternity, guys. And here's the dirty secret in all of this. There are as many Robert Cahalys doing the work for the Democrats as there are Robert Cahalys doing the work for the Republicans. And you know, Robert has been a very strong defender of President Trump. He's been a very trusted advisor to the president. By that, I mean, they really, I don't think Robert would mind me saying this. I don't think Robert talks to Trump a lot, but he talks to Jared Kushner a good bit about, you know, what does the polling say. I thought the most interesting part of that, Rev, when asked for your second choice, how many Trump voters said, I don't have one? Trump.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we need a second choice. Did you not hear me? Trump is my first choice, my second choice. And I would imagine if you asked the third choice, he would be my third choice.
Trump or nobody, it sounds like.
And that affirms my concern. And I don't know the answer to this. I've said since day one, since Trump rode down the escalator, and it was obvious there was some there. I said over and over and over again to Republican Party officials, you're making a grave error in believing that the Trump voter is a Republican voter, that there has to be a process in turning these Trump voters into Republican voters, but they're Trump voters. I mean, they're Trump voters. Now, can we encourage those people who have not been a part of the political, you know, process, and Trump says some things that resonate in their world? They show up, they get a bumper sticker, they go to a rally, they wear the baseball cap. If you asked them to quote the Republican creed, they wouldn't know where to begin and where to end. If you said, what is the Republican orthodoxy? I don't have any idea. I'm a Trump voter. I'm here to vote for Donald Trump. And we've got to some way, somehow convince them that in America today, it's a binary choice. It's a binary choice with Donald Trump. It's going to be a binary choice without Donald Trump. And we need you participating post-Trump. Whether that's 24, whether that's 28, there will be a day that you don't have an option to vote for Donald Trump. Will that Trump voter continue to loyally support an America First Republican Party? That's the sales job that has to happen within the grand old party.
And that could eventually happen if Trump endorses somebody else.
And there's got to be, and here's
heir
where,
apparent.
And here's where Trump's blind spot concerns me. Trump wants it all. I mean, I'm not complaining. It doesn't surprise me. I've been around business people my entire life who want everything their way, and they believe they're entitled and deserve to have everything their way. Politics is a negotiation. Politics is diplomatic. It has to be some degree of give and take. And Trump's real damn good at taking, but he's not very good at giving.
But don't you see a scenario, if he were to win the presidency and fulfill a second term, obviously he can't run again, where he could then set his heir apparent, Ron DeSantis or whoever it is, and then that person would be acceptable to the America First Trump voter and the Republicans.
Here's my prediction.
Maybe.
If that plays out, and God bless America if it does, if Trump wins in 24 and does a good job in 28, he has an opportunity to say, hey, here's the person I trust most to carry on the America First legacy that we've all been. He'll never say we. He'll say I, have been responsible for. Here's Don Jr., Eric, or Ivanka. You take your choice of which one you want.
Well,
that's who the guy is. I mean, his greatest strength is his biggest weakness. Newsflash. About 75% of Americans fall in that same exact category. Let's take a break. We'll come back on the other side. Got a call. We'll get there. That was kind of interesting, Robert, and in two segments. And once again, guys, I'm an amateur. I mean, I'm pretty good at running for office. Robert is really, really good at the data gathering, the interpretation of the data, and what some of the scuttlebutt is inside the belly of the beast, so to speak. I want to thank our sponsors. Carolina Bank serves communities throughout northeastern South Carolina, offering a wide range of services to meet every personal or business need, from straightforward accounts to complex finances. They're prepared to help you reach your financial goals. Carolina Bank, banking on tradition since 1936. Member FDIC. Schofield's Ace Hardware, your one-stop shop for all hardware, paint and lawn and garden needs, plus all things sporting goods, including firearms, safes, clothing, footwear, and more. Pepsi of Florence represent the entire product line of PepsiCo, one of the world's leading food and beverage companies. Pepsi of Florence also serve brands from other great companies such as Dr. Pepper, Canada Dry, Lipton Tea, Gatorade, and various regional brands. Micky Finn's largest South Carolina liquor wholesaler, serving every county in the state, largest bourbon selection statewide. They ship wines to 43 states, opening soon a new beverage warehouse across from Buc-ee's on I-95 in Florence. They support USC athletics, including Williams-Brice and Colonial Life Arena. Marlboro PD Electric Co-op. If you're in big business and looking for an industrial park in the South to build your new plant, consider Marlboro PD Electric Co-op's new PD Commerce Center. An industrial park located at the I-95 exit in Florence, South Carolina. Check it out at MPDC Co-op or PDEC.com.